You didn't find this video by accident. I need you to understand that. Of all the things you could have clicked on today, something brought you here. Something in you recognized that you needed this. And what you're about to receive is not a Bible lesson. It is a message written thousands of years ago that was always meant to find you at exactly this moment in your life. Stop scrolling. Just for a moment, stop. I need you to hear something. Not with your mind. Not with the part of you that analyzes and processes and filters. I need you to hear this with the part of you that is tired. The part that has been quietly carrying something heavy for a long, long time. You didn't find this video by accident. I know you might think you did. Maybe the algorithm surfaced it. Maybe a friend shared it. Maybe you were restless at midnight and your thumb just kept moving until it landed here. But I want to tell you something, and I need you to receive this before we go any further. There is no such thing as a coincidence when God is involved. This message was meant to find you, not someone else. Not the version of you that has it all together. Not the version of you that shows up to church and smiles and says, "I'm blessed." The real you. The one who cried in the car last week and hoped no one saw. The one who lies awake at 3 in the morning, running the same thoughts over and over. The one who prays and sometimes wonders if anyone is actually listening. That version of you is exactly who this message was written for. Now, I want to ask you something. How many times have you heard Psalm 23? 50 times? 100? More? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. You know the words. You can probably recite them without thinking. You've seen them on greeting cards and coffee mugs and Instagram posts and sympathy notes sent after someone died. But here is what I need to ask you, and I want you to sit with this question before I move forward. Have you ever actually believed it? Not just read it, not just quoted it, not just used it as comfort wallpaper for the hard seasons. Have you ever looked at your actual life, your financial pressure, your broken relationships, your silent suffering, your unanswered prayers, and genuinely believed that this psalm was describing your reality? Because if you're honest, probably not, and that is not your fault. The way most people have been taught Psalm 23 is almost completely wrong. It has been presented as a poem for peace, a verse for funerals, a prayer for people who just need to feel a little calmer before they go to sleep. And in doing so, in reducing it to that, the church has stolen from you one of the most powerful, most personal, most life-altering pieces of revelation that God ever breathed into human language. Today, that changes. What you are about to discover in the next hour is not a Bible study. It is not a sermon. It is an encounter. 7 layers hidden inside 6 verses that were written specifically for people who are in the valley, people who are broken, people who are lost, people who have been told to be strong when everything in them is falling apart. Stay with me, because what I'm going to show you will not just change how you read this psalm. It will change how you see yourself. And it will change how you understand what God has been doing in your life, even in the seasons when it felt like he was completely silent. If you've been feeling like God has forgotten you, if some part of you is holding on to hope, but you don't know why, type the word "found" in the comments right now. Let that be your declaration that you are in the right place at the right time. Before we open the psalm, before we go into the secrets hidden inside it, I need to do something first. I need to tell you what I see, not what I assume, not a generalization. I need to describe what I actually see when I look at the kind of person who stops and watches a video like this. You are someone who believes deeply, maybe imperfectly, maybe with questions and doubts you've never said out loud because you were afraid of what it would mean if you voiced them. But underneath all the uncertainty, underneath the weariness and the disillusionment, there is still a flame. Small maybe, flickering, but still there. You haven't given up, but you are exhausted from holding on. Let me be more specific. You pray, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the silence on the other side of your prayer feels deafening. You send your words upward, and they seem to fall back down, unanswered, like letters with no address. And you don't know what to do with that. Because you were told that God hears. You were told that He answers. But the thing you've been praying about, it hasn't moved. And you've been standing in front of that closed door for so long that your legs are tired. There is a heaviness you carry that most people around you don't know about. It lives in your chest, a low, constant pressure, like something unresolved, like something unfinished. You can go through an entire day at work, at home, in your normal routines, and you can function, you can smile, you can hold the conversations, but it's always there, in the background. This quiet ache that you cannot name, but cannot ignore. And here's the part that no one talks about. You feel guilty about the heaviness, because you are a person of faith. You know the scriptures. You know that He is good. You know that all things work together. And so when the darkness comes, when the doubt comes, when the grief comes, when the question comes, you push it down. You tell yourself it's not okay to feel this way. You tell yourself that more faith would make the weight lighter. But the weight doesn't get lighter. It just gets more silent. Can I tell you something right now? That is not a sign that your faith is broken. That is a sign that you are human. That you are in the middle of something. That you are in what the psalmist himself called the valley. And the valley is not a punishment. The valley is not evidence that you did something wrong. The valley is a place, and it is a place that God knows about because He has been there before you. But there is something else I see. I see someone who has been through things that changed you. Maybe a relationship that broke and left you wondering if you were enough. Maybe a loss, a person, a dream, a version of your life that you had planned, that you never fully grieved because you didn't have space to. Maybe a betrayal that came from someone you trusted deeply, someone you never imagined would be the one to wound you. And you've carried that quietly, because what else do? You keep going. That's what you do. You get up. You take care of the people who need you. You show up. You perform your responsibilities with a kind of steadiness that other people admire. And you feel hollow inside because you know the performance it takes to sustain it. And underneath all of that, underneath the faithfulness and the functioning and the carrying on, there is a question. It is a question you might not have words for, but it sounds something like this. Is this my life? Is this all there is? Did I miss something? Am I going the right direction? Does any of what I'm doing actually matter? Is God still here? That question is not a sin. That question is not a failure. That question is the beginning of the most important conversation you will ever have with God. And Psalm 23 is his answer. Not the sanitized funeral home version, the real answer, the raw answer. The answer that was written by a man who knew what it felt like to be hunted, to be betrayed by people he loved, to sit in a literal darkness and wonder if the dawn was ever coming. David wrote this psalm. And David was not writing it from a place of safety and comfort. He was writing it from the valley. He was writing it as a declaration of things he was fighting to believe, not things he was casually observing from a pleasant hilltop. That changes everything about how we need to read it. If something I just described feels true about your life right now, if you recognized yourself in those words, type "I see it" in the comments. You don't have to explain. Just let those 3 words be your acknowledgement that this message is meeting you exactly where you are. Before we go into the text, I want to tell you a story. Her name was Miriam, and she was, by every external measure, a woman who had done everything right. She had built her life with care, the way you build something you love, slowly, intentionally, brick by brick. She married young. She raised 3 children with her whole heart. She volunteered at her church every Sunday. She sang in the choir. She was the person other people called when they were falling apart. The steady one, the faithful one, the one who always knew what scripture to speak over a situation. For 17 years, this was her life. And then, within the span of 18 months, everything she had built came apart. First, her marriage ended. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with a quiet, devastating revelation that the man she had trusted with her entire life had been living a double existence for years. The man she had prayed for, believed in, defended, was not who she had believed him to be. Then her mother died. Suddenly, without warning. And grief, which she had always approached with faith and fortitude, landed on her differently this time. It landed in a way that didn't lift. Then she lost her job. And she found herself, at 43 years old, sitting in the bedroom of the apartment she had rented with the last of her savings, with 3 children asleep in the next room, and a Bible open on her lap. And she could not read it. She would open it and the words would swim. She would try to pray and the words would not come. She felt, for the first time in her adult life, completely empty. She told me later, she said, "I didn't lose my faith. I still believed. But I couldn't feel God anywhere. It was like the signal had gone dead, like I was speaking into a phone that had lost its connection." She started keeping a journal, not a devotional journal, not scripture and reflections, just honest sentences. Ragged, honest sentences about what she was actually feeling. And one night, she wrote this: I keep reading Psalm 23 because everyone tells me to. He leads me beside still waters. But I am not beside still waters. I am drowning. And the shepherd, where is he? I cannot see him. She closed the journal and she went to sleep. And in the morning, something shifted. She woke up and she read the psalm again, but this time she read it differently. She read it not as a description of where she was. She read it as a declaration of where she was going. She read it not as a present tense report on peaceful conditions, but as a present tense confession made in the middle of the opposite of peaceful conditions. The Lord is my shepherd. Not, I see the shepherd and he is beautiful and life is gentle. But in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the devastation, in the middle of the valley, I am making a declaration. He is mine, and I am his. I shall not want. Not, I have everything I need and I feel satisfied. But I am choosing to believe that the one who holds me will not let me go without what I truly need. Even now. Especially now. He makes me lie down in green pastures. She sat with that word, makes. He makes me. Not invites me, not suggests it. Makes me. Because sometimes we are so driven, so anxious, so caught in the motion of surviving, that rest feels like failure. And God has to intervene. God has to stop us. Sometimes the forced pause, the breakdown, the loss, the season where everything stops is not the enemy. It is the shepherd making you lie down because you would not have stopped otherwise. She said she sat with that word for an hour. Makes me lie down. She had been running for 17 years, serving, performing, maintaining. And the season that felt like destruction was, underneath, an act of mercy, a forced rest. A shepherd who knew his sheep was running toward exhaustion and intervened. That morning changed her life. Not because the circumstances changed. The divorce was still happening. The grief was still present. The financial pressure was still real. But she began to read the psalm differently, as a fight song, not a lullaby. As a declaration spoken into darkness, not a description of light. And that is what I want to give you today. I want to give you Psalm 23 as a weapon, as a living document, as a message written by a broken man who decided to speak the truth he was fighting to believe, and in speaking it, was transformed. Let's go into the text. Have you ever been in a season where it felt like God made you stop? Where circumstances forced a pause you didn't choose? Type forced rest in the comments if that resonates. You are not alone in that experience. Truth number 1. The Lord is my shepherd. The declaration nobody understands. 6 words. The most famous 6 words in the history of human writing. And almost everyone reads them wrong. We read them as a statement of fact, a calm observation, as if David is sitting in a field on a sunny afternoon, feeling peaceful, and he looks around and says, "Ah, yes, The Lord is my shepherd. How lovely. That is not what is happening. The word shepherd in the ancient Hebrew world was not a soft word. It was a warrior word. The shepherd in David's time was not a gentle figure with a staff and flowing robes who led docile animals through pleasant meadows. The shepherd was the first line of defense. The shepherd slept outside, in the cold, in the dark, facing wolves and lions and thieves. The shepherd put himself between the flock and everything that threatened it. The shepherd fought. The shepherd bled. The shepherd knew every single one of his sheep by name and would leave the 99 to find the one that was lost. When David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," he is not making a gentle observation. He is making a violent, defiant declaration. He is saying, "The one who fights for me, the one who stands between me and everything that is coming for me, is not a human being, is not a government, is not a system, is not a person who might abandon me or betray me or run when the danger gets too close. The one who is committed to my protection is God Himself." And here is what I need you to understand about the word "my." Not a shepherd. My shepherd. This is a personal pronoun of ownership and relationship. David is not describing a theological concept. He is describing a relationship. My, as in, this shepherd knows me. This shepherd has claimed me. This shepherd is not managing a crowd. He is attending to me specifically, individually, with specific knowledge of my wounds and my weaknesses and my exact location in the valley. When is the last time you received this declaration as something personal? Not as a verse on a wall, not as a line you repeat automatically, but as a living truth directed at the exact circumstances of your life right now. He is your shepherd, not the shepherd of people who have it together, not the shepherd of people whose prayers all get answered quickly and whose lives look the way they planned. Your shepherd. The shepherd of the one who is sitting in the middle of the wreckage, wondering what happened. Say this out loud right now, even if you're alone, even if it feels strange. He is my shepherd. Type "my shepherd" in the comments as your declaration. Let those words be the beginning of something new in this moment. Truth number 2. I shall not want. The most misunderstood promise in the Bible. Here is what most people think this verse means: that if you follow God, you will never lack anything. That you will always have what you need. That prosperity is the natural consequence of faith. That is not what David is saying. David is writing this psalm while he is in lack. He is writing it while he is fleeing. He is writing it while he has enemies, while he has grief, while he has unresolved pain and unanswered questions. He is not writing it from abundance. He is writing it toward abundance. He is declaring a truth that he is choosing to stand on, even when his circumstances are saying the opposite. The phrase, "I shall not want," in its original Hebrew context, means something closer to, I will not be left deficient of what I truly need. Not what I want, what I need. And this is where the declaration becomes demanding, because it requires us to trust that God knows the difference between our wants and our needs better than we do. You may want the relationship to be restored right now. God may know that what you need is the time alone to understand who you are without it. You may want the financial breakthrough to come this month. God may know that what you need is the character development that comes from navigating the pressure a little longer. You may want the answer to the prayer you've been praying for years. God may know that the timing of the answer is as important as the answer itself, and that giving it to you right now would actually harm you rather than help you. I shall not want is not a passive promise. It is an aggressive act of trust. It is choosing to believe, even when your circumstances are screaming otherwise, that the shepherd who knows you has already accounted for everything you actually need. That is the hardest kind of faith, and it is the most powerful. Truth number 3, He makes me lie down in green pastures. The mercy hidden in your forced stop. We already touched on this in the story of Miriam, but I want to go deeper. The word makes is doing enormous work in this sentence. In the original language, it carries the implication of compulsion, of gentle force. The shepherd does not ask the sheep to rest. The shepherd creates the conditions for rest, sometimes by leading them somewhere peaceful, and sometimes by the sheep becoming so exhausted from their own frantic movement that they finally collapse into stillness. Think about the hardest season of your life, the one where everything stopped, the one that felt like loss, like failure, like the ground giving way beneath your feet. What if that was the green pasture? What if the forced stop, the breakdown, the ending, the door that closed was not punishment, but preparation? What if God, in His mercy, allowed the collapse of the thing you were clinging to because He knew you would never have released it voluntarily? Sheep do not choose to lie down in green pastures. They must be led there. And sometimes the leading looks nothing like what they expected. The season where you had to stop, the season where you lost something, where something was taken, where you were brought low, may have been the most merciful thing that ever happened to you. Not because suffering is good, but because God specializes in turning forced stops into sacred spaces where His voice can finally be heard without competition. The green pasture is not always a beautiful meadow. Sometimes the green pasture is a hospital room where you finally got still enough to hear Him. Sometimes it's the year everything fell apart and you had nothing left to perform for. Sometimes it's the season of grief that cracked you open wide enough for His light to get in. He makes me lie down. What is He making you lie down from right now? Type the word rest if you feel like God has been trying to slow you down. If something in your life has forced you into stillness recently, even painfully, type rest and let it be an act of surrender. Truth number 4, He leads me beside still waters. The language God speaks to trauma. The word for still in this verse is not the word for dead or stagnant. It is the word for quiet, for gentle, for undisturbed. This matters enormously when you understand the biology of sheep. Sheep are terrified of moving water. Fast water, running water, rushing rivers sends them into panic. A sheep that is forced to drink from a rushing current will not drink. its fear response takes over. It will go thirsty before it will approach the torrent. The shepherd who knows his sheep does not take them to a waterfall and tell them to trust the process. The shepherd finds or creates the still place, the undisturbed pool. He leads them to water that their nervous system can receive. God speaks this language with your trauma. He does not rush you to the place of healing by dragging you through the middle of what broke you. He finds the still place first. He creates conditions of safety before he asks you to drink. This is why healing takes the time it takes. This is why you cannot force it, not in yourself and not in others. The still waters are not conjured by willpower. They are found by following the shepherd into the right geography at the right time. And here is the thing about still water. It reflects. When you stand beside still water, you can see the sky. You can see yourself. You can see things clearly that the noise of rushing water makes impossible to perceive. The season of stillness, the quiet season, the waiting season, is not just for rest. It is for revelation. It is the place where you begin to see yourself and your situation more clearly than you ever could in the noise. God leads you to still waters because He has things to show you that can only be seen in the quiet. Truth number 5, He restores my soul. What it means to be broken and remade. 3 words, the 3 most personal words in the entire psalm. He restores my soul. Not my circumstances, not my reputation, not my relationships or my finances or my career. My soul. The soul is the deepest part of you, the part that exists beneath the roles you play and the performances you maintain, the part that feels things before you have words for them, the part that has been wounded in ways that have no clinical category and no clear timeline for recovery. And David says, He restores it. The Hebrew word for restore here is shub, and it carries a meaning that is richer than what we usually translate. It means to return something to its original state, to bring back what was taken, to cause something that has wandered to come home. Your soul has wandered. You know this. It has wandered into grief and gotten lost there. It has wandered into the pattern of shutting down, of not feeling, of building walls so high that even grace has trouble getting in. It has wandered into cynicism, the protective skepticism of someone who believed and was disappointed too many times. And He restores it, not by force, not by ignoring what happened to it, not by telling it that it shouldn't have wandered in the first place. He restores it the way a skilled craftsman restores something precious that has been damaged, with patience, with attention to detail, with care for the original design. He works with what was broken and brings it back, not to what it was before the breaking, but to what it was meant to be. Sometimes the restored version is more beautiful than the original, because the breaking and the remaking revealed something that was always inside, but had never been released. Your soul is not beyond restoration. I need you to hear that. The damage is real. The wandering has been real. The grief and the cynicism and the exhaustion are real. but none of it is the final word. He restores, present tense, ongoing, active. Not he restored as a one-time event. The restoration is happening, even now, even in this moment. Type "restore me" in the comments right now, not because it's a magic phrase, but because it is a prayer. 3 words that invite the shepherd into the part of you that has been most broken. Restore me. Let it be your prayer today. Truth number 6. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the truth about darkness. This is the verse that everyone knows, and everyone misreads. Notice the preposition, through, not in, not to, not stuck in forever. Through. The valley is not the destination. The valley is a passage. It is terrain you move through, terrain that has an entrance and, critically, an exit. David is not writing from the top of a mountain saying, "I've never been in the valley." He is writing from inside the valley saying, "I know it has a through." But there is something else hidden in this verse that most people completely miss. The shadow of death. A shadow is not the thing itself. A shadow requires a light source in order to exist. If there is a shadow, there is a light. The darkness you are experiencing, the fear, the grief, the uncertainty, is a shadow, which means that behind it, there is light. The shadow exists because the light exists. You cannot have a shadow without a source. The valley of the shadow of death is not a place where light is absent. It is a place where the light is present, but not yet fully visible. Where you are close enough to the darkness that you cannot see clearly what is coming. But the shadow itself, the very existence of the shadow, is evidence that you have not been abandoned to pure darkness. There is light behind what you are walking through. You may not be able to see its source yet, but the shadow you are experiencing is proof that it exists. And David adds something else. I will fear no evil. Not I do not feel fear. Not I am not aware of danger. But I will fear no evil. It is a choice, an act of will, a decision made in the middle of the darkness, not from a safe distance. This is not naive optimism. This is not pretending the danger isn't real. This is looking at everything that could harm you, everything you cannot control, everything that looms, and making a declaration. I choose not to be governed by my fear. Why? Because of what comes next. For thou art with me. The presence of God does not remove the valley, but the presence of God in the valley changes everything about what the valley means. Truth number 7. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. The most radical promise you've never claimed. This is the verse that most people gloss over, and it contains the most extraordinary promise in the entire psalm. A table prepared in the presence of your enemies. Not after your enemies have been removed. Not when the conflict is resolved. Not when the situation is safe and comfortable and free of threat. In the presence of mine enemies. While they are still there. While the opposition is still real. While the people who have hurt you are still in your field of vision. While the circumstances that seem to be working against you are still in motion. God prepares a table for you. This is not a promise of protection from difficult people or difficult situations. This is a promise of provision in spite of them. In the ancient world, the image of a prepared table was an image of honor. It was what you did for a dignitary, for a king, for someone of immense worth. The host prepares the table, sets out the feast, and in doing so declares, "This person is honored. This person is valued. This person matters." God is saying, in the middle of your opposition, in the middle of everything that is trying to diminish you, defeat you, define you by your worst moments, I am setting a table of honor for you. The people who wrote you off, I am honoring you in their presence. The failure that made you feel like a disgrace, I am setting a feast in that same space. The season that broke your confidence, I am proclaiming your worth right in the middle of it. You are not being honored after the hard season. You are being honored during it. And here is the final layer. The table is prepared before you, meaning it was set before you arrived, before you knew you needed it, before the opposition was even visible to you. God had already prepared the place of honor where you would sit. He was ahead of you. He is always ahead of you. Type, "I am honored" in the comments. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because the God who sees all things has already prepared a table for you. You are honored. Type it. Receive it. I need to tell you something that you may not want to hear. The reason most people never receive the full depth of Psalm 23, the reason it stays a greeting card verse instead of becoming a living truth, is not a lack of faith. It is a war. There is something in you that fights against receiving this. And it has a voice. You know its voice. You've been listening to it for years. It sounds like this. You don't deserve to be honored. Look at what you did. Look at what you said. Look at the mess you've made of the things God gave you. If people really knew you, really saw all of it, they wouldn't still be in your corner. And neither would he. This stuff is beautiful to think about, but it doesn't really apply to you specifically. Your situation is too complicated. You've been too far gone too many times. You've disappointed too many people. You've asked for forgiveness for the same thing so many times that the forgiveness must have a limit by now. Other people receive these promises. Other people get the restored soul and the still waters and the table of honor. But your situation is different. Do you recognize that voice? It has many names. The Bible calls it the accuser. Psychology calls it the inner critic. Trauma calls it the survival voice. The part of you that learned early on that you needed to keep yourself small and hidden to stay safe. Whatever you call it, it is lying to you. Every single word of it is a lie. And here is how I know. Because Psalm 23 was not written for people who had it together. It was written by a man who committed adultery, who arranged a murder, who failed his children in catastrophic ways, who ran from God and returned to God and ran again and returned again. A man of enormous faith and enormous failure. And God called him a man after my own heart. The promises of Psalm 23 were written by someone with his failures on full display, which means the promises were written for people with their failures on full display. That means you. The war is real. The resistance is real. The voice that tells you these promises aren't for you is real. And it will get louder as the truth gets closer to where you actually live. But you are still here. You are still watching, still reading, still sitting with this. Something in you refused to stop, refused to close the tab, refused to leave. And that refusal, that stubborn, persistent, quiet refusal to give up, is itself a form of faith. I want you to name the voice that has been fighting against your healing. Not to give it power, but to take its power away. The voice that says you are too broken, name it. The voice that says you are too far gone, name it. The voice that says God is patient with everyone else, but is growing tired of you. Name it. Name it. And then I want you to say out loud, even if your voice shakes, you are not the truth. The psalm is the truth. The shepherd is real, and he is mine. Type "The shepherd is mine" in the comments. This is your declaration of war against the voice that has been telling you these promises aren't for you. Say it. Type it. Own it. I want to ask you something that requires more courage than anything else I've asked of you today. What are you still holding? Not the things you've surrendered and released and processed with grace. The other thing. The thing that sits in the deepest room of your interior life. The room that even your most trusted people don't have access to. The thing you haven't said out loud because putting it into words would make it too real. I'm going to be quiet for a moment, and I want you to think about it. Because what I'm about to say to you is going to require that you know what it is. There are things we carry that we were never meant to carry alone. Not because we are weak, not because our faith is insufficient, but because the human soul was designed for honest burden sharing with God and, in safe measure, with other trusted people. When we hold things alone for too long, in the silence and the dark of our private interior, they don't become lighter. They calcify. They become part of the structure of how we see ourselves. And eventually, we can't tell the difference between the wound and the identity. You have been carrying something that has started to feel like who you are. The grief that has gone on so long that you've stopped calling it grief and started calling it just the way things are. The bitterness that you are completely justified in feeling, but that has started to shape how you see every new thing that comes into your life. The fear that you've managed so carefully and so long that you've built your entire life around avoiding the thing you're afraid of. And now you can't tell what your actual desires are because they're buried so deeply under the architecture of your avoidance. The shame that attached itself to something that happened to you, not something you chose, not something that was your fault, and has spent years quietly whispering that you are less than. I want to tell you what the last verse of Psalm 23 says, and I want to say it slowly. Surely, Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The word surely in Hebrew is ou've, and it carries the weight of certainty against doubt. It is the word you use when you are speaking against something that might not feel true. It is the word of defiance against the evidence that would say otherwise. Surely, I know it doesn't look like it. I know your circumstances are making a different argument. I know the valley is still dark and the enemies are still present and the prayer is still unanswered. But surely, with a certainty that exists on a level deeper than what you can see, goodness and mercy shall follow me. Not visit occasionally, not appear when I perform well enough. Follow me, as in they are always behind me, always with me, always accompanying me wherever I go, even into the valley, even in the presence of enemies, even in the dark. Goodness and mercy are not conditions of the destination. They are companions on the journey. And then, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is the end of the psalm, and it is not an ending. It is a homecoming. The whole psalm has been a journey through the valley, beside the still waters, past the dark, through the opposition. And the conclusion is not triumph in the battlefield sense. It is return. It is home. You were always going home. The valley was always on the way home. The still waters were on the way home. Even the table prepared in the presence of your enemies was a stopping place on the way home. Every single season you've been through, the ones that made sense and the ones that didn't, the ones that built you and the ones that broke you, they were all on the way home. You have not been abandoned. You have been accompanied all the way through, toward the place where you were always meant to arrive. This is the moment. Whatever you've been holding, whatever has been in that deepest room, type "Bring me home" in the comments. Let it be a surrender. Let it be an invitation. Bring me home. Those 3 words can change everything. You made it to the end, and I want you to know something about that. You made it to the end because something in you, something deeper than impulse, something more persistent than habit, needed to hear this today. You sat with this for a full hour. You let the words land. You felt the places where they touched something real. You stayed. That is not small. In a world of infinite distraction, in a season of your life where you are carrying real weight and real weariness, you stayed. And I believe that is not just a matter of willpower. I believe it is the shepherd calling you forward. Come a little further. Stay a little longer. There is something here for you. I want to speak to you now, not as a teacher, not as a content creator, but as someone who believes with everything in me that you are in this moment on purpose. You are not an accident. Your story is not an accident, not the beautiful parts and not the broken parts, not the chapters you're proud of and not the chapters you've tried to forget. Every single piece of it, including the piece you're in right now, is known. It is seen. It is held in hands that do not drop things. You have been afraid that the damage is too deep, that the waiting has been too long, that you've asked too many times and failed too many times, and the grace is running low. It is not running low. grace does not run low. That is not a thing that grace does. Grace is the still waters. Grace is the table prepared before you. Grace is the goodness and mercy that follow you, not because you earn them, but because the shepherd has already decided that you are his. I want to give you 3 things to carry out of this hour. The first is a declaration. Every morning this week, before your feet hit the floor, before the noise of the day begins, I want you to speak these words out loud. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not as a quote, not as a ritual, but as a declaration of war against every voice that is trying to tell you that you are without provision, without protection, without purpose. Say it like you mean it. Say it even on the days you're not sure you believe it. Say it especially on those days. The second is a practice. Find the still water in your life this week. The quiet, the undisturbed place. And go there, not to do anything, not to accomplish anything, not to pray in the formal sense, but just to be still. 15 minutes, no phone, no noise, no performance, just you and the silence, which is where his voice most often speaks. Let the still water reflect something back to you. The third is an act of release. Whatever you've been carrying alone, whatever lives in that deepest room, write it down this week. On paper with your own handwriting. Not to post, not to share, just to make it real. To bring it out of the darkness of your interior life and into the light of acknowledgement. Write it down and then write underneath it in your own handwriting, He restores my soul. Let that sentence be a prayer over what you've written. Let it be a claim on the restoration that is already in motion. You are not at the end of something. You are at the beginning. The valley does not end with the valley. The psalm does not end with the shadow of death. It ends with dwelling in the house of the Lord, with safety and belonging and permanence. And you are on the way there. The path is real. The shepherd is real. And the promise that goodness and mercy shall follow you, it is not wishful thinking. It is the word of the one who holds you. Go gently. Go with courage. Go knowing that the shepherd who made you also knows the exact terrain of everything you are walking through. And he has already prepared the table at which you will sit. You are not forgotten. You are not finished. You are not too far gone. You are his, and that changes everything. Before you leave this video, I want to ask you to do 3 things. First, type the words goodness and mercy in the comments. Not because it's a magic spell, but because it is a declaration that you are choosing to believe right now, in this moment, that these 2 things are following you, even when you can't feel them. Second, share this video with one person. Just one. Think of their face right now, the person who came to mind while you were watching, the one who is in the valley and doesn't know there's a through. Be the person who hands them the psalm today. Third, if this touched something real in you, if something shifted in this hour, click subscribe. Not to follow a channel, but to say, I want more of this. I want to keep walking. I want to keep going deeper. That click is an act of intention. It says, I am not done yet. I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. The shepherd is near.